start, Jett Luchanko makes your roster at 18. Were you surprised that he was able to push, and what kind of went behind the decision to keep him?
Yeah, going into training camp, I never thought he had much of a chance, more of a outside chance, small outside chance, to be honest. But he's blown us away from day one. I mean, the speed is one thing that really jumped out. NHL, top-end NHL speed already at such a young age. That's impressive. And then you start watching him play, and it's just the detail, all the little details in his game, the way he supports everybody, the way he makes players around him better, was very impressive. And I know we have a tendency to just look at, points when we evaluate, but if you dive deeper and you watch all the little details in his game, especially defensively, in the neutral zone, always in good position, and offensively, it's just supporting his teammates, keeping plays alive. It was very impressive. At the same time, there's nothing guaranteed. He might be here for one day, or he could be here the whole season. There's nothing guaranteed, and we're taking it day by day. But he's been really impressive, and so far he's earned the rights to stay with and start with us.
You said that nothing's guaranteed. What are you going to be looking for from him to make the decision as to whether he's going to stay all year versus sending him back?
Yeah. Well, when we say, first of all, nothing's guaranteed, that applies to everyone. And obviously, there's different ways to go about it because of contracts. For certain players, there's things you can do and cannot do. But at the end of the day, Torts still decide who plays. He's in charge of the amount of ice time or even just being in the lineup. So that's how we hold players accountable, and Jett falls into that. Now I get that there's different rules with him, and everybody's going to bring up the 9-game thing. There's no decisions made on that one way or the other. It's going to be on a daily basis, just like everybody else. And then what was the second part of your question?
Basically, just what are you going to be
looking for?
Does he need to produce offensively? If he looks good but has 0 points in 9 games, does he stay?
It's not just about points. Obviously, points are important because they help you win when you score goals and you set up plays. But sometimes you'll set up plays and your teammate doesn't finish. So it's this overall game that we're going to be looking at, just like we did in training camp. Going to evaluate the full spectrum, and more than that, in its case too. It's not just in the moment. Does he help us more than the next guy in line? We also have to take into consideration his age and his development, and what's mostly important for us is, in 3, 5, 7 years from now, how can we create the best Jett Luchanko as well? So those are all things that we're constantly thinking about and discussing and debating. But we felt he had earned the right to start on the team and start on the Flyers.
Yeah, and what's the risk in a setback in his development?
There's all kinds of things, right, where people will start saying, well, you'll limit his offensive output, or you won't let him grow or get his teenage years. There's all kinds of things that you can come up, and the funny part is there's examples on either side. There's guys that were rushed that never really took the next steps, and there's guys that were rushed and became amazing players. The one player like that comes to mind for me is Patrice Bergeron. So it's not a clear path to an answer when we debate that. Everybody has their opinion, but we're certainly trying to make the best decisions for him and his future.
How do you balance the mental side of it, right? Being an 18-year-old, maybe not performing, not doing what he wants to do against the grown men of the NHL, much bigger guys, and then going back to juniors and facing all.
Yeah, and we went back and we talked to his coaches. That was all part of the search that we had, leading into the draft, and that was probably the one area that everybody's raving about him, his character, his demeanor, how he approaches. He's a very, very mature person already. I don't want to put more pressure on him, and I'm not going to throw the names that were used to compare him with, because I don't want that out there. But it's impressive the way people that have been around him, how they see as far as his leadership, how he carries himself, the comparisons that were being used to try to explain Jett Luchanko.
How do you view the center position as a whole? Because obviously he's a center. We've seen him with body break and therapy. You have two older veteran centers. Sean Couturier is coming off of the surgery, and he says it's minor, but him and Scott Lawton, I think it's safe to say they were a little bit up and down last year. How much of this is position based, and how do you view the center position as a whole?
Well, the center position is a tough one. When you look at it, I mean, you're basically supporting all your teammates out there. In the offensive zone, the neutral zone, defensive zone, you're always the guy that is heavily involved in all facets. So it takes a mature person to play that position. That's why they're so tough to find, also, and that's why it's tough. It's a tough position for young players to really come into the league and make an impact. So that's another thing that we're going to be watching for. He's shown us in training camp and in the games that he played that he can hold his own already at his age. But it's also true that teams were not fully NHL players. There's AHL guys and junior guys involved in those games. So that's something we're going to pay attention to when it's full NHL rosters that he's facing night after night. That's something that we're going to pay attention to as well.
How do you view Sean Couturier? Are you confident he can, based on what you've seen, that he looks 100% to you?
Well, first of all, he showed up in great shape. He was able to navigate towards his camp, which was extremely difficult as far as the volume of skating that he has, that he puts the guys through. I thought he was just okay in the games, but I also get it. He wasn't the only one. I talked to the veterans this morning, and I didn't like the game part of our training camp from most of our veterans. A couple of them were really good, but every single one, to a man, showed up in great shape, put in the work in the summer. Every single one of them did well in the skating test and in the practices that he put them through. I just didn't like some of the games from our veterans. Now, I get it also. It's games that don't really matter. You don't want to get hurt. You're trying to get prepared and get ready for game one. But it's also tough to turn that switch on. So, I told the players, I said, there's too many of you that are just a little too casual in the games. And I don't want them to be surprised when game one starts and they're still trying to navigate through training camp. When game one starts, we're facing a really good team to start with. On top of that, I told the guys, you got to start to get the right mindset as far as competing. So, a lot of the guys, it just wasn't quite good enough in the games. But the rest of training camp, passing grades for everyone. We're really, really happy with how the guys showed up and plowed through, towards the skate and practices.
John Tortorella said that now that it's the third year that this team is under this coaching staff, he doesn't want anyone getting too comfortable or complacent. As a front office, do you kind of have that same philosophy that he shares with everybody?
Yeah, well, Torts has more experience than me when it comes to that. He did mention that, and it's something we're going to pay attention to. And the other thing, too, don't forget, is slowly, the room is starting to hold each other accountable more and more. And that's, for me, the exciting part. We're still a very, very young team, but already we're seeing more and more of the young guys kind of take on a bigger leadership role in the room. So that's the part that I'm excited about going into year 3, and see where it goes. We expect this year to be a tough year once again, but we want to see improvement. We want to see guys take another step, especially from the younger generation.
Alexei Kolosov, can you maybe explain just kind of what went into getting possibly be going back to the KHL if things don't go well over the first couple months? Just
Yeah, so we're and we told him all along, we wanted to see him. We wanted to see where he was at. He believed that he needed another year in the KHL, and we told him we didn't really agree with that. We wanted to see him. We wanted to see where he was at in his development. We hadn't seen him in the summer development camp, and not showing a training camp put us in a tough position. And I get it from his standpoint. He thought he needed another year, or he thought he was ready for the NHL. I'm not sure where he fit between the two. But we basically told him, we want to see you. We want to know where you're at. So that's the exciting part for him coming over. There's nothing set in stone as far as where is he going to be? Is he going to be in Lehigh the whole year? Or is he going to play some games with the Flyers? You know how it works. There could be injuries. There could be changes. So it's something we're going to evaluate pretty much on a weekly basis. We're excited that he's here. I went to see him play on Saturday in Lehigh Valley. He had a great game. But we need to see more of him. We need to see where he's at in his development, and then we'll make the right decision moving forward. But there's nothing set in stone as far as how the season's going to go for him. What we care about is his development and try to help him, take the next step.
Do you feel like you guys, the Flyers and Kolosov and his camp, that you guys are in a good place from a relationship standpoint now?
I think so. And you see, it was tough last year. Coming at late in the season, there's so many things going on. We wanted him to come see Lehigh Valley or how things are done here in the American League. We're also fighting for a playoff spot when he came. There's so many things going on. We didn't have a Russian-speaking player around. Everything was kind of rushed. It was a tough situation for him. Seeing him now, he's really engaged. Our goalie coaches, both here and in Lehigh, were raving about him, his work ethic and how engaged he was. And I know yesterday the guys took him out. They didn't tell me where they went with him, but they had a good time with him. And that's, that was why it was so surprising to hear all these things, because when I spoke to the players in Lehigh Valley, they all had great things to say about Alexei, the person. He's definitely a little shy and not the most outgoing person, but all the guys said, super nice to everyone. Never had an issue with him in the dressing room. They really enjoyed him. So I hope he starts to feel more comfortable as well with the group, because it's not easy also for him coming late in the season like that, trying to fit into a new team that is also battling for a playoff spot. So I'm excited. I think he's in a good place mentally, and I know everybody's excited that he's here, and his teammates seems to be having a good time with him at the moment.
You mentioned about you're going to evaluate all year about his situation, whether Lehigh, whether he gets time in the NHL. Is it still a possibility, depending on how things go, that he could eventually get loaned back?
Yeah,
or is that off the table?
No, that's also a possibility, to be honest with you. We haven't made a decision, but we haven't taken anything off the table.
Is there any steps in place, because there was supposedly the rumors about he didn't have someone to speak Russian with? Is there steps in place to mitigate that?
Yeah, both from the team standpoint and his agency also. They're heavily involved, trying to make him feel good. We have some people that work in the organization that are going to spend more time in Lehigh, and we also have Rodrigo Abels that speaks the language. But one thing that I was surprised with him is how much he understands. He's not comfortable speaking much, but he could understand quite more than I expected when I spoke to him. So that's it's good. It's good that he's making efforts to try to learn the language as well.
John said that he's doing power play more by committee this year. He brought in Leclerc, Shaw, and so forth. Did you have input into that, and if so, what were some of the suggestions?
I was involved in some of the discussions. I mean, we're not going to give you the game plan for it, but I think it was certainly interesting, even for myself, to hear the thought process for guys like Danny Heatley and John Leclerc and Patrick Sharp, guys that and I'd all played kind of different positions. Danny Heatley was in his prime. I mean, he was the setup guy for Kovalchuk. Patrick Sharp was a shooter. Johnny Leclerc, was a power forward, net front. So everybody kind of had played different positions when talking about the power play. So I think Torts and Rocky had a lot to listen to, and I think it was great discussions when we talked about the different views from different players on how to approach the power play. Now, we have a couple new guys that I'm hoping will help as well. Some of the guys are a year older, the Tippett's, the Frost, the Konechny. Adding Matvei, who's has always been kind of a power play specialist wherever he's been. Jamie Drysdale, healthy. Those are all positive things. I certainly don't expect our power play to go from 32nd to top 10 in the league. But what I'm hoping for is an improvement this year on that.
How crucial is that, though? In other words, to get at least somewhere in the middle of the pack.
I think middle of the pack might be a little much to ask for right away. We're hoping for an improvement, and maybe a power play in 22nd place last year probably gets us in the playoffs. So that's what we're looking for. I'm not looking for top 5, top 10, even top 15, but definitely a step in the right direction is what we're looking for the power play.
What did you think of Michkov's camp? Did it exceed your expectations? Are you
Yes.
more excited now?
Yeah, it exceeded my expectation, to be honest. Got a little worried with all the skating. First time for him to see something like that, and I kind of saw that in a couple of the games. You saw the games that he'd get bagged the previous day. It was a little tougher. I thought he was lumbering around a little bit more, but still he finds a way to make plays. And then the games that he had the day before to kind of rest and have a lighter workload, I thought his skating was great. And the pressure at both ends, even on the back check, I thought he showed us a lot when he was rested. So the stuff that he does, his playmaking abilities are outstanding. I was really impressed in the battle how he positions his body to keep pucks alive all the time. A lot of guys, they get in the battle and they take a big hit and they get kind of pushed out of the way and someone else comes in, picks up the puck and go. You watch him work with his feet and his stick, and he's always thinking ahead of everybody. He takes the hit, but his feet are making a play with the puck at the same time, and you're like, oh, how did he keep the puck? That's the kind of stuff that he does. I loved how he went into traffic, wasn't afraid to take a beating, was willing to give it back. Around the net, his competitiveness around the net, in the crease. I look at Bush back there, and I'm sure you wouldn't have liked a player like that, always banging at his pads and jamming, and it's something that makes him special. It's not easy to go there, and we look from the outside. It's like, oh well, if I want to score a goal, I'd go in the crease and take a beating, but to have the guts to do it every single shift, to go back there and position yourself in the crease, knowing that you're going to be taken out and you're going to take some slashes and some cross checks and punches to the head. I was really impressed by that.
You mentioned those guys in their mid-20s now, the Farabee, the Frost, now Gates. A lot of these guys have had significant stretches where they've been really solid contributors, but also significant stretches where it's been a up and down for them. For this team to hit the next level and be a playoff team, how important is it for that particular group that's now has some experience to kind of be among the guys that lead the way?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I mean it's a good question and one that we don't really have an answer because you never really know. You hope that the guys mature and are ready to have a more consistent season throughout the year, but that's part of the youth and the inexperience, and we still have guys that have to go through that. So it's to be expected. I hope that what we went through last year at the end of the season, that our players will learn from that too. When the games get tougher, it's not easy to play games down the stretch when you're battling for a playoff spot. It's a lot easier when you're out of it and you have nothing really to play for. The pressure's not on. It's a lot easier to play those games, and that's why you see late in the season, you see teams that are out of the playoffs can't kind of make a push because they have nothing to lose. It's a lot harder to play when you're stuck in that battle and every shift matter. So I was really happy about that at the end of the year. Not the way we ended up outside the playoffs, but the fact that we had the chance to experience that. And hopefully we're in a position where late in the season we play a game that matters once again. If we're in the playoffs, well, the games in the playoffs will matter. But if not, that's not the case. At least come down to the stretch, and for the experience of our guys, it's great.
Danny, going back to Jett for a second, I know the 9 games, it's not necessarily a hard fast deadline. You could keep them longer, could always send them back later. But with regards to how you guys are going to do that, if he maybe struggles a little bit to start and maybe sits him down for a game, there have been some teams that have looked at it as, well, we'll stretch out the 9. We'll keep him up for a couple months. He'll play a couple games a week or whatever. Yeah. Is that something you guys would consider, or if he's getting sad, is it more like let's just get him back there?
It's something, and you're right. Those are the things we discuss. I don't have a clear answer for you. We're going to navigate as we go. We're obviously going to keep an eye on him. We'll try to put him in the best position to succeed. But it's something we're going to go. There's nothing set in stone with him either at this point. It's something we're going to evaluate on a daily basis with him.
With Michkov, how do you see him handling the pressure of someone, I don't want to use the savior word, but he's been portrayed a little bit as like this,
Which I hate, by the way, that word.
But he's kind of been portrayed that way, as like this, he comes, everything's going to get better.
He's obviously something, the way he plays, that we don't have a lot of, and that's why it's so exciting. But at the end of the day, it's his rookie season. He's 19 years old. He still has a lot to learn. There's going to be some ups and downs in his season. On the flip side of that, he's been dealing with this pressure for a long time already. It's almost as if he's comfortable in it so far. But obviously, it's our job also to protect them as much as we can.
Do you have a sense of how many of players like him you need? I know you obviously want to get as many great players as you
20.
possibly can. Right, I get that. But have you looked at roster construction of great teams and you said, oh, okay, Tampa had Stamkos and Hedman and 3 elite forwards and elite defensemen, elite goalie. Like, do you guys?
And we're probably not going to get another first overall pick. And you also have to be lucky to have, when you have a top 3 or 4 or 5 pick in the draft, that it's a year that those guys are, excellent. You never know. And that's why it's so tough to, when you hear about the tanking, you need some luck too with the tanking as far as the getting the right players. There's so many different ways that teams can be built.
Right. No matter how you come by those players.
I mean, when you look at, you take a team like St. Louis a few years ago. They didn't really have. They had Pietrangelo, who's probably a star player, and Tarasenko. But even like those guys were, I wouldn't say they were, superstars at the level of McDavid and McKinnon and Makar. So there's different ways that you can build your team. St. Louis that year was built with more depth, and they got a goalie that got hot at the right time too. So there's many ways I think you can build the roster. Those superstars that we're talking about, there's very few of them, and when teams have them, usually they don't let them go. So, I wish I could have more, but I think it's doable to build a contender without having many of them. But as long as you have good, solid players that are almost star level below that.
Danny, speaking to the Ryan Johansson situation, obviously that was another thing that happened in camp. They filed the NHL. They filed grievance. Are you guys involved in this that much anymore? Or is this now more mostly on the NHL? And is this going to,
No,
the
that's-
fact that it's in limbo, is it going to have an impact on your decision making from a cap management standpoint and
Yeah.
roster?
No, we're involved. That's still on us, and obviously the lawyers are kind of taking over that, the sharing of documents and all that. It's a little bit above what I usually do, so I let the pros deal with that. As far as the cap, the NHL have told us that at the moment he's off our cap, but I'm also aware that if we lose our case, that money's going to come back, and I don't know how it's going to be distributed moving forward. But it's money, unfortunately, that I can't use at the moment, just in case that this doesn't go the way we are hoping for.